You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Hello, Colts fans, and welcome to the Colts Blue Zone podcast. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Joe Hopkins. I'm joined today by Mike Chappell, and we're going to recap the Colts' close loss to the Commanders, discuss Sam Ehlinger's first NFL start, and we're also going to talk about some takeaways for that game as well. Before we get started here, Mike, how are you doing on this Halloween?
Pretty good. One thing I'll throw out there, because we make predictions. I predicted 17-16 in my online prediction. So, of course, I predicted the Colts 17-16. I suppose that matters, doesn't it?
Just a little bit, but a great score. I mean, you were right about the under. Let's go ahead and get into the recap here. The 3-1 Colts host the 3-4 Commanders. This was supposed to be Carson Wentz's return to Indianapolis, but it ended up being the backup bowl with Sam Ehlinger and Taylor Heinicke starting at quarterback. Star linebacker Shaq Leonard made his second return from injury this year, but the Colts would be without defensive end Quiddipe, who continues to rehabilitate his ankle that he suffered a few weeks ago against the Broncos. But Ehlinger, in his debut as a starter, out there, and the offense got off to a slow start per usual. Indy's first two drives ended in 3-and-outs. But thankfully, the Colts defense did their job early and forced Washington to punt on their first two drives as well. Ehlinger and the offense got going on their third drive. Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman Jr. combined for 62 yards on this drive. Taylor broke a 27-yarder, his longest of the season, but appeared to get hurt on the play. He would leave the game, have his ankles taped, and later return. After Taylor's run, the Colts had a 1st and 10 at Washington 25, but a second down sack would be too much to recover from. Indy settles for a 46-yard Chase McLaughlin field goal. Colts strike first, up 3-0. But, Mike, I want to talk about the sack for a second. It looked like the offensive line wasn't even ready for the snap. The whole right side just didn't even block anybody. I guess that's the kind of thing that can happen with a new starter at quarterback.
Yeah, somebody in the locker room mentioned there was a cadence issue. And like you said, that's what happens when you've got a new quarterback. You've got maybe a week or week and a half to kind of prepare for this, because Ehlinger took some snaps the previous week. But it's one of those things you have to deal with when you change quarterbacks midseason.
Yeah, so the Colts up 3-0, but Washington would respond. After a first down on the ground, Indy's own Terry McLaurin would cook Kenny Moore from the slot. He caught a short pass crossing the middle and takes off for 42 yards down at the Colts' 19. A couple plays later, Heinicke would find Antonio Gibson wide open in the flat. He strolls in for a 9-yard touchdown to make it 7-3. Looked like a busted coverage on the play. Either Shaq Leonard or Stephon Gilmore has got to pick that up. Gibson finished with 7 catches for 58 yards. Mike, the Colts had issues covering the flat all day.
It was crazy. I mean, I don't know if it's a linebacker or the slot guy who's supposed to be. I would assume the linebacker, but time after time, you kind of wonder, if other teams can. And this wasn't just an isolated incident. It's happened this season. So I don't know whether, I think Shaq Leonard talked about miscommunication. I don't know. He took exception that he might have been responsible for the touchdown. Somebody. Those were just gimme yards. And in a game like this, easy yards should not be the norm at all, and they were.
Yeah, they were, especially on that drive. The teams would then trade punts. 6 minutes to go now in the half. Colts looking to retake the lead, and they find success on the ground. The drive starts with a nifty 28-yard run by Paris Campbell, who had a real nice game Sunday. Then 9 yards on a direct snap to Nyheim Hines. 8-yard run by Taylor. 9-yard run by Taylor. Then a fat face mask on an Ehlinger run sets Indy up at the Washington 13. First down, 4-yard loss by Deion Jackson. Second down, pressure gets to Ehlinger, who loses the ball as he tries to tuck it away. Fumble recovered by Washington. A killer turnover in the red zone. That's the kind of thing that just can't happen. Ehlinger got hit, but he seemed to kind of cough up the ball before the hit even got to him. Just mishandling of the football cost the Colts points on that drive. 2:30 to go in the half. The Colts defense would hold, and we go in at halftime 7-3. Washington gets the ball to start the third quarter, and they're driving near midfield. 9-yard gain by McLaurin on third down sets up a 4th and 1, and the Commanders opt to go for it. They run it up the middle with the rookie Brian Robinson, but E.J. Speed comes knifing in and brings him down in the backfield. The Colts take over at the 50. Ehlinger picks up a first down with his legs. Then on 3rd and 8, he finds Alec Pierce, who makes a fantastic catch for 9 yards. A couple plays later, the Colts facing 3rd and 3 at Washington's 21. Jonathan Taylor is stuffed for no gain. The Colts settle for another field goal, and they shorten the lead. It's now 7-6. After Indy's defense forces a 3-and-out, the Colts are driving once again. Alec Pierce beats his man deep, and Ehlinger delivers a beautiful ball for a 47-yard gain. Then, 8-yard run by Taylor gives Colts 2nd and 2 at Washington's 26. Taylor bursts up the middle again for a first down, but he's loose with the football and fumbles it on the hit from the safety. Washington recovers. Mike, that's another Colts fumble in scoring territory.
Yeah, normally what's really killed this team is they have turnovers and at least a points. I think it was like 46 points, whatever, on the turnovers coming into Sunday's game. This didn't cost them, Washington didn't score points, but it cost the Colts points. You're going to get at least 3 each time, and the way they were moving on those drives, probably one of those is a touchdown. And it's just, so I guess we can't blame this on Matt Ryan, can we? I mean, there's a lot of stuff we can with the turnovers, but they've now fumbled 21 times. That is staggering. I think they've lost, what is it now, 5 or 6 fumbles?
I think 7.
Is it 7? 7 fumbles in 16 turnovers. It's tied for most in the league. Good teams can't overcome 16 turnovers, and the Colts are not a good team.
No, they are certainly not. You are what your record says you are, and the Colts don't have a good record. Like you said, Mike, the Colts defense able to hold. They force a 3rd and out after the fumble with a 3rd down sack on Heineke. Indy's offense gets the ball again, and they're looking to rebound. A holding call on Matt Pryor wipes out a 21-yard Ehlinger run. But then Paris Campbell on the next play takes a screen pass and scoots for a gain of 38. The play after that, Ehlinger drops an over-the-shoulder dime to Nyheim Hines for 22 yards. It's first down at the 3-yard line early in the fourth quarter. Ehlinger rushes off the left end, but for no gain. Second down, a little toss pass to Pittman, who kind of goes around the left tackle, collides with the defender at the goal line. It's originally called a touchdown, but after further review, the play is overturned, setting up 3rd and inches from the goal line. The Colts give it to their star running back, Jonathan Taylor, who is stuffed up the middle for no gain. And Indianapolis decides to kick a 3rd field goal now to make it 9-7. Mike, I want your thoughts on that series at the goal line, because I thought there was a few interesting things there. But before I talk about it, what did you think of that series?
Well, it just showed you how creative Reich tried to get down at the goal line. I mean, he tries the quarterback sweep, which obviously didn't work. And then you try the touch pass, and I tell you, first glance it looked like Pittman was in, and then he wasn't. And then with Taylor, at some point this year, when are they just going to say that they can't play short yardage with their running back conventionally? So I guess I didn't have a lot of problem with it. They still believe they can get short yards with their running back, and it can't happen. I had no problem taking the field goal there. You want to get the lead. Should have been a touchdown.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with the field goal either, especially after you lost yards on that, 3rd down. Maybe if it was still 4th and inches, you think about it a little bit harder. I thought Michael Pittman Jr., and it's easy for me to say, here, but Michael Pittman Jr.'s got to find a way to get in the end zone there. Reach the ball out, go over the top. You're 6'4", 220 pounds, going up against a defensive back there. I was shocked that Pittman, who's usually great with the ball in his hands, wasn't able to score on that play. And then the third down, I would have been more surprised if Jonathan Taylor was able to knife in. They're in the shotgun. It's a draw play. They hadn't been able to block all year, and they certainly weren't able to on that one. I thought maybe a quarterback sneak from Ehlinger would have been a nice choice. Ehlinger able to push the pile a little bit, maybe get Taylor behind him, shove him into the end zone. But nonetheless, the Colts had to settle for the field goal and finally get their first lead of the football game.
Hey, one thing on the sneak possibility, that was brought up to Frank Reich about, not necessarily in that play, but later we'll talk about a key play that didn't take place. He said that, having so little time with Kelly and Ehlinger to work together, sneaks are tough with a quick exchange. And, they haven't worked much on the sneak with the new quarterback, so they were not comfortable trying a sneak either in this situation or later in the game when they could have salted the game away.
I guess that does make some sense because with the center exchange there, he's got to get it quickly to the quarterback and then block his guy because he's right. The center is really the key guy on those quarterback sneaks a lot of times. Colts defense now looking to protect that 2-point lead. On Washington's first play, Tyquan Lewis gets to the quarterback as he throws. The ball flutters up into the air and right to Shaq Leonard. The interception sets Indy up at the 25. Colts now, it's second down, and a holding call on Quentin Nelson puts Indy in a 2nd and 22 hole. But the next play, the Commanders are called for pass interference on a deep throw to Paris Campbell, and that gives the Colts a 1st and goal at the 6-yard line. Colts in shotgun. Ehlinger hands it off to Hines, who gets to the corner and struts into the end zone for the first touchdown of the day. The Colts take a 16-7 lead with 11 minutes left. And the way the defenses have been playing at this point in the game, that 2-possession lead feels insurmountable. But boy, it sure wasn't, because suddenly the Colts defense that had been so good for so much of the game fell apart. Indy allows Washington to go on a 12-play, 82-yard drive that takes over 6 minutes off the clock. Commanders march down to the Colts 3, but an incompletion on third down leads to a field goal. It's now 16-10. We're back to a one-score game. Colts get the ball with 5 minutes left. They need to either extend their lead or drain the clock, and they accomplish neither. Colts go 3 and out after Ehlinger's run on 3rd and 5 comes up just short. And to put the icing on the cake, Frank Reich loses a timeout by challenging the spot. Matt Hawk, I always call him Hack. Matt Hawk, who rebounded nicely after a rough outing in Tennessee, punts the ball 56 yards, and Washington takes over at their own 11. With 2 minutes and 39 seconds to go, Commanders still have all 3 timeouts. 3 plays into the drive, the Colts have a chance to end the game on a 4th and 1 at Washington's 20. But the Commanders convert. Heineke buys time and completes a 12-yard pass to Curtis Samuel. The next play, the Colts lose Tyquan Lewis to injury, and he's carted off the field after having a very nice game. Lewis was disruptive against that Commanders front. You got to feel bad for Lewis. We'll talk more about his injury in just a minute. Then Heineke scrambles for 9 yards. Heineke connects with Sims over the middle for 21 yards. Washington hurries to the line. Ball at Indy's 34. Heineke snaps the ball, looking, backing up, heaves it deep to McLaurin, who rips the ball away for Stephon Gilmore, comes down with the catch, gain of 33 yards, timeout Washington, ball at the 1-yard line, and 26 seconds remaining. Very next play, quarterback sneak gets the Commanders into the end zone. All-important extra point is good. The Colts stunned, down 1 point with 22 seconds left. The Colts have 1 timeout remaining, and their drive starts at the 25. Can Ehlinger pull off a miracle? First down, he hits Pittman's in the hands at the 50 with room to run, but MPJ drops the ball. Absolutely brutal. Really a tough game for Pittman, and Indy cannot pull off the improbable win there with just 22 seconds left. We have a final score of 17-16. The Colts dropped their second in a row. Mike, before we get to takeaways here, let's talk about injuries. Tyquan Lewis, it looked like a serious knee injury. He was carted off the field. You spoke with Frank Reich moments ago. What did he have to say?
Yeah, patella tendon. He ruptured his left patella tendon. And it's just crazy because last Halloween, October 31st, he ruptured his right patella tendon. So done for the season. This kid can't catch a break. He's not a star. He's not one of those top tier players. But boy, he's just such a good player. And with him in the rotation, he just adds so much. Where they're going to get that from now, I don't know. Maybe they get Quiddy payback. We'll see. But just too bad. And then Jonathan Taylor again had the ankle. He tweaked his ankle, the same ankle, the right ankle that had been bothering me. Got it retaped, and we'll see. I expect him to be limited in practice this week, and it's been a tough year for JT as well. And then we had Tony Brown left the game with a hamstring. Other than that, I don't know that there were any other injuries.
Yeah, that's just, I mean, obviously, Jonathan Taylor being the star that he is, the ankle's concerning, especially being the same ankle. We'll see if he's able to play this upcoming week in New England. Tyquan Lewis, I mean, you just got to feel for the guy. He's dealt with injuries, I mean, really his whole career. And you think about that draft, Lewis and Teray, both second-round picks in that draft, both promising defensive ends who's really had their careers derailed because of injuries. Looking at takeaways now, new quarterback, same problems. The offense got off to their typical slow start, 8th straight game without points on the opening drive, 10th straight game trailing at halftime. The Colts have been outscored 105-42 in the first half this season. That's abysmal. And the Colts are also the only team in the NFL to trail entering the fourth quarter in every game this season. Turnovers killed them once again. 2 fumbles in scoring territory. As you noted, Mike, that's 7 lost fumbles on the season, tied for the most in the NFL. 16 total turnovers, tied for the most with New Orleans and New England. And, you know, you couldn't blame the offensive line too much for the turnovers, but they were, again, tough to watch. Ehlinger did his best to buy time. He was sacked twice. Untimely holding calls really cost them a few times in this game. They failed to line up and consistently open holes in the red zone, especially in short yardage situations when you really need it. The Colts entered the game averaging 16 points and 2 turnovers per contest, and that's exactly what we got Sunday. I know Matt Ryan was kind of ended up being the scapegoat. The Colts bench him and turned to Ehlinger, and we'll talk about him in just a minute, his debut. But, Mike, it just goes to show that Matt Ryan definitely had his own fair share of failures during this season, but it's so much deeper than Ryan.
Well, it is, and we talked, I think, last week going into the game that so much would depend on the supporting cast, and would the better players step up and help the quarterback? And no, they didn't. I mean, JT loses a fumble, Michael Pittman, doesn't get in. That's a tough play at the goal line. So it's that's one where if you reach out and you fumble it, then you're a goat. So the one that bothered me big time was the drop around midfield. I think he hit him in the hands about the 45, and he would have got to the 50, maybe a little past into Washington territory. You'd have had 16 seconds to play, and another completion. And we know the leg strength of Chase McLaughlin, so that's the one that really got me, because it would have, with that one, you would have had a very realistic chance of winning that game. And when you talk about the offensive line, I think that really impacted Frank Reich. The play I was talking about when it was it 3rd and 5 late in the game, and Ehlinger dove for the first down yardage, and he was just short. I mean, inches short. And 4th and 1, what was it? 4th and 1 at their own 34. And you're leading by 6. Maybe in another year when your line is what it's supposed to be and Taylor's getting what he's supposed to, you think about getting a half a yard. But because he said he thought hard about it, and the good old analytics chart said I think it was kind of even on what you should do. But he just couldn't trust a sneak because of what we talked about. He couldn't trust the offensive line, which that says a lot when you can't trust your offensive line to get you half a yard.
Yeah, it sure does. Well, and especially I thought it was the right call because the defense had been playing so well all game. I get they just gave up the field goal, but you kind of expect them to, after that, get it back together a little bit and close out the game for you, and they weren't able to do it. Let's talk about Ehlinger. I thought he was very solid in his debut. He certainly didn't blow me away, but the game didn't look too big for him. He looked poised out there. 17 of 23 for 201 yards. No touchdowns, no interception. He did have the fumble. He also rushed 6 times for 15 yards. Mike, as he stated, I mean, we talked about in this game the star players really needing to step up and help elevate Ehlinger and make some plays for him. I thought Paris Campbell did that. I thought Alec Pierce did that. I thought Pittman and Jonathan Taylor both failed to do that. And Pittman, I mean, that's the second week in a row where he's had a rough end of the game because against Tennessee, he had the fumble late in the fourth quarter when the Colts were trying to make a comeback attempt. So Pittman really having a tough couple of weeks. Give me your thoughts on Ehlinger.
I thought he wasn't the reason they lost, I guess. I mean, the fumble was crippling, but he did enough. It's just hard. I saw some people wrote that he showed that maybe he's the future. I can't go there. I don't want to trample on Sam Ehlinger because I thought he played well. And in my mind, snapshot, I think he showed that he is at worst a solid backup who can come in and for a week or two get the job done. Now, over the long haul, I'm not sure, and we'll see. We're talking one game, so we're drawing all of our comments off one game. But I thought he did his job. The fumble was unfortunate because he was just trying to secure the ball, and it got away from him. But he made 4 or 5 plays that Matt Ryan could not have made because of his ability to avoid pressure and get outside. And I think the more he plays, and from what Frank Reich said last week, this is his team for the rest of the year. I think you'll see his confidence grow. Maybe they can do more with him when you have more time to work on that. On the flip side, defenses finally will have game tape of him. So is it possible we saw the best of Sam Ehlinger Sunday because they didn't really know what they were going to see. So, but I thought he played well. It beats the heck out of the alternative where your eyes tell you this isn't going to work. He can't handle it at the moment. It is too big for him. I just want people to tap the brakes that he is the franchise quarterback maybe that can replace Andrew Luck. I just think that's unfair on so many levels. Let's let this develop and see where it goes. He's going to go into a hornet's nest in Foxborough because Bill Belichick, whatever Sam Ehlinger thinks he's seen, he'll see 10 times more than that in Foxborough. So I thought it was a very, very good, competent debut. But let's just kind of leave it at that, and let's not make more out of it than what it was.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you can take from that game and say, yeah, this guy is the leader of the franchise going forward. I thought the best thing I could say in taking away from that is that I don't think the Colts made a terrible decision in deciding to bench Matt Ryan and go to Ehlinger. I mean, the offense at worst was the same, right? 16 points, 2 turnovers. I thought Ehlinger was competent, and I thought he played well enough to where you go, okay, he deserves to keep starting the rest of the year. It would have been a nightmare if he went out there and just, the 3 interceptions, completing 50% of his passes, and just completely fell on his face. And then you're in a position where you have to go, well, shoot, do we turn to Nick Foles? Do we go back to Matt Ryan in a few weeks? We can't keep starting this guy. Ehlinger definitely shows that he deserves to keep starting. The offense is, at very least, the same offense, at least production-wise, that we saw with Matt Ryan, and hopefully he'll be able to build on this. Obviously, going up against Bill Belichick next week is going to be a tall task, but the Colts seem like they're going to evaluate him the rest of the season, get to the offseason, and then decide, is this someone we feel confident enough to go into next year as a starting quarterback, or do we need to go find the next guy this offseason? And it could be both, right? I mean, the Colts could bring in another quarterback, and if Ehlinger beats him out, then Ehlinger beats him out. We'll just have to see, but I think it's far too early to draw any kinds of conclusions.
This will be a topic for down the road, but they have got to find their quarterback in the draft. They simply do, and in my mind, the idea that maybe Ehlinger shows enough over the next 9 games, is it? My goodness, this is half the season to go. Is just crazy. It's just crazy. So I think what we're going to find out is this guy can be a very, very solid, dependable backup. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. But wherever this franchise goes in the next 10 years, it will be led by the quarterback who comes in from the draft next April.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. Ehlinger would have to blow us away over the rest of the course of the season to do enough to hold off drafting another quarterback. So, and that's not a dig at Ehlinger. I mean, he was a 6th-round pick. If he's a guy who can come in and have a 10-year career as kind of a backup or spot starter type quarterback, that's a very successful career. I mean, we're watching quarterbacks who were the 2nd overall pick, like Zach Wilson in New York, not play as well as Ehlinger played on Sunday. So no slight to Ehlinger, but he's going to have to really do something special over the rest of the course of the season to kind of kill the talks of the Colts drafting their future quarterback. But we have a lot of time to discuss that. I want to get to our next takeaway here. Darius Leonard, in his return back, is clearly still working himself into game shape. I mean, he had the interception. I thought that was a gimme. I mean, it went right to him. Any professional football player should be able to catch that ball. Gave up a lot to running backs underneath. What was kind of concerning to me, Mike, is he looked so slow out there. And I get it. He's had some major injuries over the past several months. The back surgery is a significant surgery to have. Hopefully, Darius can keep working his way back and kind of use the rest of the season to get healthy again, get that, I keep calling him Darius, get that Shaq Leonard athleticism back again. But for a guy who, we're now into week 8, he still just is not moving like we're used to see him moving out there.
Well, and I think that's to be expected. And you've got a note on here about how he wasn't on the field in the 4th quarter. And everything you've said is why. He's not ready yet. And if that's, motivation and something that he doesn't like what we say about it, that's fine. But he just, whether it's reaction, whether it was being comfortable, he said, the first series or so, you're just trying to learn the game and get back comfortable. And then finally he kind of found that comfort level. But yeah, he looked slow, if that's the right word. Now, whether that is slow athletically or slow reaction time, I don't know. But I hope this isn't a lost season for him, because there's still plenty of time to play, to get yourself into shape, get yourself back and make a difference. But we're talking some serious injuries, primarily still, I think, the back in the missed time, and we'll see. But he wasn't the same. And you're right that the interception was Taekwon Lewis's, play.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. I tell you, it's just amazing that some guys are just around the ball. They just make plays, and at the end of the season, nobody's going to care that Any pro athlete would have made that interception because he did, and he did. But yeah, I don't know where he is, 80%, whatever. He's not back at all, and I understand why they had him on a pitch count.
Yeah, I do too. And I mean, I'm not going to overreact. It's his first game, well, I guess his second game back, but his first game back. Hopefully he'll be able to week after week get a little bit faster, a little bit better, react a little bit quicker, get those instincts back, get that athleticism back, and get back to that player that we all know and love, because a healthy Shaq Leonard is a sight to behold. I mean, that's one of the most exciting football players to watch in the National Football League. Love his game. Hopefully he can get back to what he was sooner rather than later. Final takeaway, got to talk about that defensive collapse on the final two drives there. They gave up 10 points and 171 yards during Washington's final two possessions. And it came back to really what has plagued this team the last several years is in the fourth quarter, they can't close out games because they can't get to the quarterback. They were unable to get to Heineke. No one made a play when it mattered most. It's difficult because I know Kwity Paye's not out there, but Buckner had the sack in, I think, the first quarter. Really didn't have much of an impact, in the fourth. Yannick Ngakoue got another hustle sack when there was a pressure from somewhere else, and the quarterback was just kind of scrambling. But Yannick is not beating his man and making the impact that the Colts thought they had. It seems like another year where the pass rush is still not fixed.
Oh, on the play to McLaurin, I mean, goodness gracious, what was it, 7, 8, 9 seconds? I hate to see Gilmore kind of lose contact with McLaurin at the top of the play that led to the reception. But you just can't expect corners to cover that long. It happened a couple times earlier in the drive too. They converted a couple of fourth downs because they couldn't get pressure on him, and that's what's so frustrating. Because again, I understand Frank Reich's decision to not go for 4th and 1 from your own 34 because it worked out exactly as he hoped it would. Hawk punched the ball down to what was it, to the 11-yard line.
Yeah, great punt.
They've got 2 minutes and change. Yes, they had their timeouts, but 89 yards, and they needed a touchdown. And it's just again when the defense limits them to 171 yards and 10 first downs in the first three, then it's 171 and 10 first downs in the fourth quarter. Make a play. How many times have we said make a play and they couldn't do it? They couldn't do it and didn't do it.
Yeah, not a takeaway here, but kind of a question I wanted to pose to you, Mike. What should the expectations be for this team moving forward for the rest of the season? I think everyone kind of has their different opinion on this. Frank Wright says we're certainly not waving the white flag, and that's exactly what you're supposed to say as a head coach of this football team. But me personally, I mean, at this point in the year, the Colts are 3-4-1. They're, I think, at least 2 games behind the Titans now in the division. I kind of just want to see the young players play some good football and get some good draft position so that the Colts can kind of find their quarterback, or if Ehlinger does play well enough, maybe they find a left tackle high in the draft. I know Chris Ballard, if he's still around, loves building in the trenches, but what would you like to see from this team for the rest of the season?
It's a good question because I don't know that it matters, because we were talking in the press box last night about tanking, and I don't think they need to, and they never would. The word tanking to a professional athlete is despicable. And go up and ask DeForest Buckner about, hey, if you tank this year, it's really going to help your draft status. He'd probably punch you, because these guys, players, don't care about next year. They don't care about building for the future. But I don't know that it matters, because what we've seen, I don't know where you can say, I see where this team can get on a mini roll and do this. If they were playing, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, if they're playing semi-decent, you go to New England and you win an ugly game. The Patriots aren't very good, and they've got quarterback problems. And then you've got the Raiders, who might have had one of the all-time bad games against a bad Saints team. Then you get the Phillies, goodness gracious, baseball. Then you've got the Eagles coming in, which good luck with that one. But there are games to be won. Pittsburgh later on. There are games to be won. But what makes us think they're going to flip a switch and quit turning the ball over, and the offensive line is going to get its act together? So I don't think they're going to consciously tank. I think they're going to end up not playing well, because right now this is not a good football team. And good teams find ways to win, and bad teams find ways to lose. And right now, this team is doing just more than enough to find ways to lose. What should we anticipate record-wise? I don't know. They'll win 3 or 4 more games because they will. And from your point, that's going to hurt their draft status. But I just don't know where the optimism comes from, getting beyond the coach speak, on where this team's going to give the fan base reason to think, forgetting draft status, that this season's going to be anything more than just frustrating week after week after week.
Yeah, I saw Paris Campbell had a comment talking about the encouraging part to him was that it's not something that teams are doing to them. It's something that they're doing to themselves, the mistakes, the turnovers, the mental lapses. We're 8 weeks in. I mean,
yeah, but that's what he said. He said we're 8 weeks in, and we got to quit saying that.
Yeah,
we got to do something. The common denominator is not Washington or Tennessee or Jacksonville. It's Indy. It's the Colts. That's the common denominator. We can blame Matt Ryan all we want, and he had a hand in it, but he didn't play yesterday. There were still 2 turnovers. It's incredible in today's NFL that you can come in averaging 16.1 points a game and actually hurt your scoring average in a game. You can't compete week after week in this league with an offense that can't score.
Yeah, and beating yourselves week after week for 8 weeks. I mean, at a certain point, that's got to come back on the coach. When you have a football team that consistently beats themselves, I saw a report from NFL Network's Ian Rappaport saying that several sources told him Frank Reich's job is safe. I would expect that means, during the season, as we've all kind of talked about, we'd be shocked if there was an in-season firing. But I think after this year, I mean, I'd be surprised if Frank Reich was still the coach of this football team, the way the football team consistently keeps beating themselves and making their own mistakes. It's not like there's a lack of talent out there and the other guys just better than you on a talent scale. This is a very talented football team that can't get out of its own way. And I'm a guy who's defended Frank Reich for years. I like Frank Reich, and I think he could go on to have success elsewhere. But I think at this point in time, the Colts need a change. They need a fresh start because whatever is going on, whatever coaching is going on, is not working.
Yeah, we'll see. I also saw where Jim Irsay reached out to Chris Mortensen, and what was the quote? That I empowered Frank to make this change. Ehlinger.
What does that mean?
I roll my eyes. I don't believe at any part of my being that Frank Reich was the inspiration behind the change. I just don't. I think it works against him on so many levels, but that's neither here nor there. But again, I hope this thing doesn't spiral further out of control, but my fear is that it might.
It very well might. While we're kind of on the subject and talking about this Colts season, the trade deadline is Tuesday. We've seen a few trades already in the NFL, and I think more are expected at 3-4-1. Should the Colts be sellers?
Yeah, probably. It's funny because I think it was Wednesday last week when somebody did ask Frank Reich if going to Sam Ehlinger was a sign of waving the white flag, and he took exception to it, as he should. Mm-hmm. As he should. But you trade a player, you trade two players, and if that's not waving the white flag, I don't know what is. So we'll see. I think they've got some players teams would like. I think they would love to trade Matt Ryan, get something for him, because they made it very clear that they've moved on after, a guy that they hoped would play for 2 or 3 years for him. They gave him 7 games, and again we've talked whether we can debate the good and the bad of it, but I'm not sure they're going to find a team willing to take on the contract. Because it's kind of huge. I haven't looked at the numbers. I just don't think it's going to happen. But I can see a team in contention that might think that he could help them in December if an injury hits. I don't know what New Orleans is like with Winston, and Matt Ryan's better than Andy Dalton. He just is. I could see Ngakoue being traded.
Yep.
I think he's been just south of okay. Okay, but teams are always looking for pass rushers. Always looking for pass rushers. Stephon Gilmore, but when you get to those names again, that's saying that this season is done. And the minute you do that, the players, the fan base is not stupid. They know what you're doing, and the players left on the team understand what's going on. And again, if I'm a veteran and I see you starting to dump players, it tells me all I need to know, and I don't know that it impacts how they play, but it just gives you a sign of where immediately this team is headed, and that's trying to make things better for next year, which is not what a player on this year's roster wants to talk about.
Yeah, they got a couple more names that I think might be prime trade candidates. Ryan Kelly, not playing up to his contract status. He's getting nearly $10 million this year. Next year, that goes up to 12, and in 2024, that goes up to $14.5 million. Another guy, Kenny Moore. That's someone who hasn't had near the impact he has had in the past in this new Gus Bradley scheme. He's someone who's unhappy with his contract situation, and there might be a place elsewhere where he could have a bigger impact from that slot corner position. And I do think there's a difference between the coach throwing in the white flag and the team kind of doing what it needs to do to set it up for success in the future. Just because the coach isn't going to give up and the players aren't going to give up doesn't mean the team can't do what it needs to ultimately have the most success going forward. You look at the Carolina Panthers. They traded away their best player in Christian McCaffrey, and they're out there. They beat the Buccaneers last week, and they should have beat the Falcons this week if it wasn't for a bogus penalty called on DJ Moore for taking his helmet off, even though he was off the field of play.
It's in the books, isn't it? Wasn't he in the end zone?
No, he was outside of the field of play.
Okay.
Tony Dungy actually has a Twitter thread about it, talking about how that shouldn't have been called, and former referee responded and was like, yeah, that should not have been called because he was not on the field of play or in the end zone when he actually took the helmet off. But regardless, that's an example of a team doing the best for the future of the franchise, but at the same time still playing very hard and trying to win with the coach and the players that they have. Wrap things up here. Let's go ahead and take a quick look around the AFC South. The Titans are starting to run away with the division. They advanced to 5-2 after a 17-10 win over Houston. The rookie quarterback Malik Willis didn't do much in his first start for the injured Ryan Tannehill, but it didn't matter because Derrick Henry ran all over the Texans, 219 yards and 2 touchdowns for the King.
I noticed that I think I saw the note right that he tied the all-time NFL record with 6 200-yard games, and he's had 4 in his last 4 games against Houston. That's
unbelievable.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I remember coming into the season going, well, Derrick Henry was hurt last year. He's 28. He's had a lot of carries. He's a big man carrying a lot of weight. This might be, starting to break down on him. I could not have been more wrong about that. Derrick Henry looks like the MVP caliber running back that he has been for the last several years. Colts are technically in second place in the division with a 3-4-1 record. Jaguars are in third. They fall at 2-6 after a 21-17 loss to the Denver Broncos in London. Trevor Lawrence continues to struggle. I mean, he was supposed to be the next best thing since Andrew Luck, and he is not living up to expectations. Passed for just 133 yards on 31 passes, 2 interceptions, including one on the final drive when they had a chance to win the game late in the fourth quarter. And then Houston sits in last place. They're 1-5-1. That tie in week 1 looks even more perplexing by the week after how poorly Houston's been playing. And I'm sure the Texans have their eyes on the top college quarterbacks for April's draft. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Colts Blue Zone podcast. We will be back on Thursday. Hopefully Dave Griffiths will be feeling better and able to join us on that one. But on Thursday, we'll be previewing the Colts trip to New England. And I get a lot has changed, but it's still the Patriots, darn it. And forget the tank when you're playing New England, because I still want to see the Colts beat them. So we're going to be talking about that on Thursday. Follow Mike on Twitter at mchappell51. You can follow me at Roto Street Joe. Follow the Colts Blue Zone on Twitter at Colts Blue Zone, so we can keep you informed with everything that pertains to Indianapolis Colts day after day. And if you're not already, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast so our shows get delivered directly to your listening device as soon as they drop. Again, thanks for tuning in, and take care, Colts fans.